I'd like to welcome everybody in to Simple Fun 360 Education Week for the final time. Today is our last session. My name is Daniel, and I'm a part of the training and documentation team here at BGL. I'll be running today's session. Today's session is all about best practice fund processing. Essentially, you've got a number of transactions entered into the fund. How are you looking to process them, and what's the general best practice for managing these in some unique situations? Maybe you might not be aware of where transactions need to go. What solutions does Simple Fund 360 have for you in those cases? Before we do actually get into the content, like always, we do have our housekeeping matters to attend to. And like all the other sessions this week, all participants are on listen-only mode. If you do have a question, please do use that Q&A function in the Zoom panel there, and we'll be happy to attend to all of your questions as soon as we possibly can. We'll get to as many as we can, and I'll have a short session towards the end to answer some other questions, as well as potentially go through some things on the screen as well. In addition to that, all of these webinars are recorded and will be uploaded to the BGL YouTube channel. Anyone who has registered to any of these events will receive the link to the recording as well as a copy of the slides along with those, which is important for this particular one, as I've included a little bit of a particular slide that can help you down the line. I'll explain that a bit later. So, as you might already know, this is a part of the Simple Fun 360 Education Week. We have had a large number of topics, over 10 topics that we've covered in this entire week. And if you did want to review any of those, feel free to jump onto the BGL YouTube channel. I'll post a link to that in the channel right now. And as you can actually see, if I tab over to it, we do have a number of these webinars already uploaded for you and ready to go. So all that content is available for you and will be on the YouTube channel indefinitely, ready to access whenever you might need to touch up on any of these specific topics. In addition to that, we do have the education weeks for our other products as well coming up, with Simple Invest Education Week coming up next week, and then the week after we're going into the CAS 360 Education Week. So if you do use those software, or if you're interested in those, feel free to follow the same link to the BGL Education page. That way you can enroll and sign up for those other webinars as well. But that's enough about Education Week. Let's get into the content for today. So we'll be covering firstly how to enter data into the fund. Some of these methods we've already explained in some other webinars, but I'll briefly go over what they look like and how they'll present to you within Simple Fund 360, as well as we'll go through the process of uploading a bank statement quickly and getting transactions out of those. And we'll need those to demonstrate the second part of our webinar today. That second part being the smart matching screen. Smart matching is an incredibly easy way to manage your transactions, essentially guiding you along the process without having to manually go into each transaction and change particular accounts. It'll provide suggestions based on descriptions of transactions, as well as has some other little functions in there that can be useful in situations. And we'll cover all of those when we get to the second part. And then the final part of today's webinar is about client query management. What that means is there might be situations where there's transactions in your fund and you're not exactly aware of where to post these. So you would need to contact the clients that you may have for them to provide further information. We'll go through that process, show you exactly what it looks like from selecting the transactions, sending off the message, the person receiving that message in their email, and the processes they would need to complete to send you information back. That way you can complete those within Simple Fund 360. What I wanted to start off with first is an outlining of the commonly used data entry methods in Simple Fund 360. So we have this table on the screen for you here, and this is what I mentioned when the slides would become incredibly useful, because what I've done is actually linked all of these particular individual data entry methods to the relevant help article that we have. So if you had this slide up for you and you are curious about, for instance, the BGL Bank Data Service, you can simply click on it and then it will bring you to the support page. In addition to that, this does work when you do open the file in any PDF file browser. One of those, for instance, being Google Chrome here. I've got the slides that this is what I would be sending out to you. You can scroll down to that particular slide, and then you can select any of these to open those links to those relevant pages. So that is something that's incredibly useful for you. And if you've signed up, you'll get a copy of this along with a link to the recording as well. But as in this particular table, I've outlined them ranging from the more automated methods to the more manual methods. And generally what we'd expect is you to pick and choose what is more appropriate to your fund. If you're able to get the bank data service and the contract note service, that is what I would typically see in more in a lot of the funds that I've actually experienced there. It might be for the case that they're paying that extra subscription for that service, so they want to make use of those. But in that case, they are actually the most automated methods in order to bring transactions into the fund. On that note, we will be uploading a bank statement today, which as you can see is about halfway down. It is a little bit automated in the fact that it can extract transaction data. However, it does require you to go into the smart matching screen and manage these transactions, essentially telling the fund where they need to be posted to. There are some other methods outlined here, including manual transaction entry, which at a baseline is always available. You can always go into the transactions and manually change them, posting them to accounts as needed, or changing the amounts as needed. And that does have its use cases in particular instances, but what we typically recommend is trying to automate it. That way it saves you more time and means a lot of the mistakes that can typically happen with data entry are avoided because it's completely out of your hands. Instead, it's coming from a bank statement or for a contract note directly being uploaded to the system. So we'll jump over now into Simple Fund 360, where I have a fund set up, and we actually have two data feeds enabled on this one. I'd like to show you those just to show you what it looks like in the fund. I'll go to Connect on the left side here and to the feed management screen, which is where we can see how we've set up our BGL bank data feed, as well as our contract notes servers. As you can see, I have set up the BGL bank data service. It is showing as feed operating here, and we do have our BGL contract note service. It currently is displaying as awaiting activation as we are in a test environment. However, if you do have contract notes flowing through this feed, I would expect this feed status to be feed operating. If you do have situations, and I know there was a number of people during the BGL bank data webinar who were stating that their feed status was sent to bank, typically, I'd like to answer that now. It can actually take approximately 10 to 15 business days in order for that authority form to go through to the bank and be approved. So there can be some timing differences. However, if it does extend beyond that time period, feel free to get in contact with us and we can investigate what might have gone wrong along the way. So with these two data feeds, how do you actually see what transactions are coming into the fund? Well, we can go to accounting on the left side and go to the transaction list. And as you can see, arguably it is the fastest data entry method because I haven't had to do anything. All of these have automatically come through the data feed and been entered into the fund. You can see there are a number of transactions here. And the one feature I'd like to point you to that can be incredibly useful is the ability to filter these transactions in order to see where they're coming from. To do so, we're going to the search bar in the top right. We can select that and select the additional filters option. So that's this little funnel here on the right side. Then for our drop down here, we need to select a particular field we're searching for. We're going to select filter, and what we're after is the data source, or where these transactions are coming from. When you select this, you have a variety of different options you can choose, but some of the most common ones you would search would be BGL bank data. And if you actually select BGL bank data, then it will filter your transaction list to only transactions that have come through the bank data feed. So these are all the transactions that have come through there. If, for instance, I were to go back and change this, and we can change this here to ComSec, because that's the contract notes we have set up, then we're not going to see anything. I'm unsure why we're not seeing anything here. I do apologize. Maybe it was the contract notes. There we go. So the contract notes here. I believe the ComSec was related to the ComSec feeds that are available. My apologies. The contract notes was the one that we're after. And as you can see, we have some contract notes. We do have some other instances showing here of match transactions, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. So that is typically what you'd expect with bank transactions and feed transactions coming in, and how you can search them in the transaction list here. Another way that we can bring transactions into the fund, as I mentioned, is through a bank statement, and I'll show you exactly how we can do that right now. I do need to actually change the, I don't need to change fund details, that's all set. We'll head to accounting on the left side and heading to the smart matching screen. There are a number of different ways to upload transactions into Simple Fund 360, whether that is sending an email to the SmartDocs email with that document attached, uploading it directly to the document screen. But another option we have is going to accounting, the smart matching screen, selecting the option to data entry or to import bank statements here. And then we have the option to drop or browse files here. These all achieve the exact same result. Essentially, by going through this process directly into the screen, you're skipping the document screen analysis stage, where it determines that it is a bank statement and allows you to bring that data into this data entry spreadsheet. So we can click confirm for the bank statement. That will analyze the data here. It'll just analyze the document and then will generate a number of transactions for us, which hopefully will happen at any point now. It is taking a bit more time. I do apologize for the delays here. There we go. That one has been uploaded. And as you can see, it's showing a number of these transactions along with the dates and descriptions of them. And this is the data it's taken out of that bank statement. If we select any of these, such as the date, the descriptions, or the amounts, they will be selected on the right side to show you where that data is coming from. And your job after entering the bank statement is simply ensuring these details are correct and then clicking create in the bottom right. You might have noticed there is a question mark next to them. That's because these are in the next financial year. We don't recommend uploading transactions for a future financial year, but I'm doing this for training purposes as this bank statement is in the 2021 financial year. So there we go. We have these ones here and we'll select create, which then will bring our transactions into the smart matching screen. You'll notice we have our two banks up the top here. That way you can click between the any banks that you actually may have entered. We have the CBA Training Bank, which is related to that bank statement we just uploaded. And we also have our ANZ Bank, and this one's related to the data feeds, the BGL Bank data feed that we had. So now we have a lot of transactions in our smart matching screen. It now comes to the time to actually process these. So I'm going to run through a couple of processes that are most commonly used in this screen. And as you can see, we do have some automatically matched transactions, which you might have seen in today's session as well as some of the other session. I'll talk to you about rules created by the system to automatically match these together, as well as the ability to make your own custom rules. And then we also have a couple of smart matching screen functions that I'd like to go through today. We don't have a lot of time, so I can't cover absolutely everything on the screen. However, these are some of the key features that I would recommend you using that way to improve the speed of your processing in funds. So when it comes to automatically matched transactions, what that means is there is rules in place that will determine if a transaction needs to be automatically matched to another account. I'll just show you an example of that in the transaction list. And that is denoted by these icons up the top here. Unmatched transactions are transactions you have uploaded and have not connected to another account yet. So we'd expect that to be posted to any other account, whether that's income, expenses, liabilities, any sort of investments, member accounts, many different things can be matched to the other side of a bank transaction. And that is what we're completing with the smart matching screen. But we are talking about the auto matched function here. And what this has done is actually connected two transactions from our feed together, which is why we suggest using the BGL bank data feed and the shared data feed, because when the transactions come in and they are within 1 day's difference and they are of the same amount, they'll automatically be matched together. For instance, this first transaction here is a purchase of 200 units for West Farmers. If we were to click the drop-down status here, it shows us this has been auto-matched using the bank and investment matching rules. We can click unmatch to actually separate these, and it will show us the two transactions together. So if I do that, and then search for west.ax, we'll search for that amount actually, 0.95. We can see the two transactions. This bottom transaction is coming through the bank feed, and then the top transaction is coming from the contract notes feed. Simple Fund 360 has recognized that these two are the same amount, and they're within the date range according to the settlement date of the transaction. So that's very important. When it comes to investment transactions, it will look at the settlement date, and when it comes to bank transactions, it looks at the date of that transaction. If they're the same amount and they're within a certain amount of days, then they will automatically match together based on system rules. If this doesn't happen, you do have the option to select both of these transactions, and so long as they are the same amount and on opposing sides of a transaction, we can match them together. Then bring them together. Unfortunately, because we have unmatched and rematched them together, they will show as manually matched from now on, which is why we typically recommend not unmatching any of the automatically matched transactions if you want to keep it that way. However, if you did want to review the various different transactions in an automatically matched transaction, you can do so as well. The next thing to have a look at is automatic custom created rules. So these are all system created rules. However, you can actually create rules for your own funds that suit your own purpose. One of them that we're going to set up right now is going to be for pension payments. So if we jump back to the smart matching screen, once again on accounting and smart matching, and we'll open up the ANZ Training Bank, we have a number of transactions here. You'll notice a number of them have something in common, their description. And this is what we're going to use to essentially create a rule. That way we don't need to manage these transactions ourselves. To do this, we can select one of these transactions. Then we can scroll down a little bit and we have the option to create a custom rule. If we do that, it will pre-fill a custom rule based on some of the details of our transaction we've selected. You do also have the option to go up to the top to matching rules, and then you can choose to create a new rule from this screen as well. But doing it via the smart matching screen pre-fills some of those details, so you don't need to do as much work yourself. You can let the system do the work. So if we create a custom rule, then from there we can enter the details for this. And what we're going to say is if the description contains exactly monthly pension for John, we're going to post it to John's pension account. You can change this account as desired. If you wanted to change it to a distributions account, you can choose that. If you wanted to change it to a investment account, that is also available there. So for instance, our shares accounts here, you can select those for rules as well. But in this case, we're only going to search for pensions paid. And we're going to post to John's account here. And then you can choose the percentage that is allocated to that account. If you did want to add multiple other accounts in this custom rule, you can do so, but you would need to make sure that percentage does add up to 100%. So that would need to be 90. But we're just going to leave it as the pension paid account right now. The next thing to note is that these two toggles here, if you want to apply this rule to all bank accounts, so that would be our ANZ training one, as well as our other concept bank account that we have, you can tick this box as well. And if you want the option to review these transactions before the system matched it together, you also have that toggle as well. In this case, we're going to leave that toggle off, so we're going to let the system automatically match these if the description contains monthly pension for John. The final thing down the bottom is it will show transactions that match this criteria. So in this particular case, all 7 of these transactions are going to be matched and posted to John's pension account. If we were to add some more details up the top, then as you can see, it doesn't match the criteria anymore, so it's not going to show those transactions. There we go. And then down the bottom, you can change the name of the rule if you wanted to. And we can click create. Now that that rule has been created, you can see we no longer have those 7 transactions relating to pension payments. If we wanted to manage the rule, we can go to the matching rules screen and we can click into this rule we've created and edit that. And then if we go back to our transaction list and search for monthly pension, then you can see we have a number of automatically matched transactions that have been done based on our user-created rule for John's pension paid. So that's how it goes from the beginning. You take a transaction, take a section of it, whether it's the description of it, or various other things such as amounts that are coming in to the fund, create a rule with it, and then apply it to any future transactions that are uploaded. I will quickly run through the other 2 functions that I did mention there, which is the search and the split function. We don't have too much time, so I am going to do a very brief rundown. Hopefully it gives you information regarding this. In terms of the search function, what the search function will do is attempt to search for a matching transaction that exists within your fund. In this particular case, we're going back to the ANZ Training Bank and we're looking for sell BHP. In this, if we select this transaction, you'll notice the search button has a 1 icon, meaning that an opposing transaction, a matching transaction, has been found. If we click that, it will display the transaction, its date, its amount, and the details of this particular transaction. So long as the amounts match, it will display in the search function here. From there, you can simply click match, and then it will combine those 2 together. And I'll show you exactly what that looks like now. So it has been manually matched, and the transaction we are looking for is this 2000 here. So if we back out and we click the drop down, you can see it's been manually matched by me here, and it is for that amount of 62,000, which we were seeing previously on the screen. If we were to unmatch, and I'll actually search for BHP, then we can see our 2 separate transactions down the bottom that we've combined together. Essentially, we've clicked on this bottom transaction, gone through a search to find the other investment transaction, found that other one, and then combined them together. If I did want to, I could actually unmatch them like I just did, head back to the smart matching screen, refresh the screen, and then the transaction is right there. So I can process it once again. Search for the transaction, we see it there, and we'll click match. The other option we do have that I'll mention very briefly is the split function. If you have transactions coming in your bank feed, then you might need the option to actually separate it into a number of different other accounts. One of those situations we find is contributions, where this is contributions for both John and Mary. If we click into this one, we have the option to select split on the right side here. That will open up another screen where we can start entering different accounts that we wanted to split this amount into. So for the first one, we can select John's account. We can make sure that amount is correct. So let's say he's only receiving 7,000. Then we have the more details button right next to it, similar to our other transactions, where we can fill out the contribution details. So we're saying it's personal. We can close that, and then we can select in the next line our other account, which is going to be Mary contribution, which I believe should show up if we search for Mary. There it is. And then we can enter in the credit amount as well, which in this case is going to be 13,000, and we can enter the more details for that as well. One note about contributions is the more details section is combined for all the members, so you only need to fill out one section of this more details, so long as you have all of those member contribution accounts selected. It's a little bit of a side note there. We click match, and if we jump back to the transaction list once again, we can review that contribution transaction. As you can see, it is now has the bank side being the debit, and it has separated the contributions into John's and Mary's account. Now, in the case where the transactions have been brought into the fund and you're actually unaware of where these transactions are coming from, we have a variety. We have client query. Client query is available for you, and if I jump back to the slides, A client query allows you to communicate with your clients and request information such as a transaction's category, its purpose, or documents related to that transaction, and have that sent to you. I do need to run through this very quickly, so I do apologize, but I will jump back into the fund. In order to use client query, all you need to do is select any of the transactions that you might be questioning. We can select a number of these here if we wanted to, and then we can select the query button. Additionally, you do have the query button on individual transactions if you wanted to select them. So we can select query, and then a little pop-up will show saying transactions added for trustee review, and then we just need to go to the client query screen. So accounts, and then accounting, and then to client query here. We do have our 5 transactions that we've just added, and as you can see, we have the date, description, and the amount for these particular transactions. If we wanted to send a message, what we would need to do is ensure that we have our fund relationship set up first. That way, this system, the client query system, knows where to send the emails back and forth. In that case, that is in your fund relationship screen, so fund and fund relationships. And you do need to have an accountant set up, and naturally you would need to have your members set up as well. If you did need to do this, you go to the fund relationship screen and you can simply select a contact and drag it over into the necessary section. So when you click send message, it will send a message related to all of these transactions appearing on this screen. You'll need to select the accountant up the top, and underneath you'll select the recipients for this. So which member which client of yours would you like responding to this? This particular query, we're going to select John Jones, as that's my email address, so I can show you the other side. You have the firm name that is pre-filled, you have a subject, which you can also change as well, and you do have a body, which you can also change individually for these messages. A preview of what it'll appear as on your mobile phone, appears on the right side. But essentially what this email states is that we're currently completing work and we have questions about some transactions in the fund. So let's send that one off. And what I will need to do is open up my email address, and hopefully we'll receive a message anytime now. So as you can see, all entries have been made with the client. That's now been moved to the with client status, which is currently sitting there, and will be updated to responded when your client fills out the details on their end. This is the email they would receive, where it says to please help clarify us with some queries related to your SMSF accounts. All they need to do is click this link here to access those outstanding queries. They don't need any sort of login. It will simply bring them to this particular screen where they can see all those transactions you've selected. From there, they can select it. They can input some details such as what category does this transaction belong to. In this particular case, it is credit interest, I believe, and none of these are quite appropriate, so I'm going to select other. And this, we can then input some details about the actual transaction from the bank account. If you did want to upload additional files, that is also available to you. However, if that's not appropriate, they can simply click next and move on to the next transaction. In this particular case, we do have a dividend, so I'm going to select dividend. In this case, what might be more appropriate is they simply send a document related to it. So if they select upload, then they can navigate through their particular files, find the file related to it. So in this case, it is a PDL dividend. We have our PDL dividend here. You click open. That one is now attached to this particular transaction, and they can move on to the next one. So this is what we'd expect your clients to do, is to go into these transactions and answer the questions relating to them, informing you of where these transactions should be posted to within the software. In addition to that, all of these documents that are selected will be uploaded to your document screen. I'm not going to cover the rest of them, but we have selected 2 documents and we'll click submit for those ones. And then it's going to prompt us to complete the others, which I'm just going to run through very quickly so we can get back into the software. Oh, it appears that I needed to click submit for those. I do apologize. Not the arrows there once you've actually completed them. I do forget this step. Um, Once you've selected them and submitted the details, you do need to click submit. Then you click submit and notify for the final one here. It'll say they've resolved all the queries when they've submitted all of them. That's completed. We can simply close this down. A notification has been sent to the accountant within the software. And if we close this particular screen and head back into our Simple Fund 360, we can refresh the client query screen, and all of those 5 has received a response. In addition to that, we can click in, and as you can see, this particular file here, the PDL dividend that we uploaded a file for, you can click in and you can see that document that was uploaded. In addition to that, if we head over to the document screen as well, like I mentioned, the documents are not currently in here, which is what I would expect. I'm not sure why that happened. I apologize. It may take some time for the documents to actually flow through from the client query screen. But I did test this yesterday, and when I upload the documents, they did appear on the document screen as well. In addition to that, if we were to go back to our smart matching screen to continue processing, go back to where these transactions exist, and we have our PDL dividend here, then that should be attached to the fund. I do apologize for some of these issues that can occur because of a training environment. However, when you do upload those documents and bring them into the client query screen, on this particular screen here, then they should automatically attach to those transactions that they've selected. From there, once you can go in, click in, and have a look at some of the details of the transactions. But once you're finished with all of these, what is simply needed is to move them to closed so that you're saying that you've answered all these client queries, all these transactions are completed, and then they sit in the closed tab. There's no way to delete any of the client query transactions. They all just simply will sit in closed. For instance, if you were to make a client query on a transaction, if we do one with this one here, and we'll go to the client query screen. Let's say this was a mistake. What you would need to do is instead just simply move it by clicking the arrows all the way to the closed section. And that will bring in the closed screen. I do apologize for the technical difficulties that we've had. In this particular case, I would expect that any document or attachment that is selected by clients when they're using the client query screen to be automatically attached to transactions when they actually are sent back to the fund. And that is essentially client query, or a brief overview for that. It's not appropriate for everybody. However, it can help solve those little gaps in information if you are not aware of where particular transactions are coming from. And that does bring us to the end of the content for today. Thank you very much for your patience during today's session. I understand it has been a long week. It's been a lot of webinars going on, but hopefully you were able to get something out of today's session.